South, the series, is an audiobook production. It contains subject material not suited for a younger audience. Listener discretion is advised. South, the Pinewood High School incident, is the telling of an unfortunate soul, a young girl lost to the whims of society. We follow the story of Cassidy Learman, a Pinewood High School student, as she finds herself stumbling down a dark and dangerous path. In Allura Shores, corporations control your every thought. It is a place where governments decide where you live and who you talk to, where the best parts of humanity are stripped away, turning the innocent into the monsters we fear the most. The path of darkness is broad and inviting. A banquet of thieves ready to take all you have. Hold true to your beliefs. If you are not careful, someone will replace them with their own. In the previous chapter, Cassidy met up with Heather and Penelope, looking a little worse for wear. The girls discuss Jessica's departure from the coven, at Cassidy's dismay. Before she can leave, Penelope gets a grand idea that Heather reluctantly agrees to, albeit with a catch. While wandering the halls of the school, Cassidy is approached by James, who tries to comfort her. Cassidy, on the other hand, tries confiding in him, which begins to turn him off. After a brief back and forth, James and Cassidy decide to separate for the time being. When in her next class, Cassidy hallucinates and flees the class in embarrassment, ultimately finding herself outside and in the presence of none other than Lydia. She is presented with a chance to lead the coven as her second, but when asked about her inhabitant, Cassidy lets spill that she was assaulted by a woman named Elizabeth, and the Ander is no more. Lydia does not take this well and seems to quickly dismiss Cassidy in favor of an appointment. I wonder with whom. Later, it is late evening and Cassidy walks with Penelope to the gym locker rooms. They prepare themselves for the seance, but Penelope grows weary. Something about the legitimacy of the process doesn't feel right to her. Cassidy does her best to comfort her, and they find themselves entering the ritual space Heather set up. It doesn't take long for Cassidy to lose herself in the proceedings, and she manages to spot none other than her father in the void. He rejects her, however, but not before she tries calling out to him one last time. And there you have it. Let's get into chapter 12, where Cassidy is going to have to figure out what she's going to do with what she's been shown. Cassidy? Penelope gasped at the sudden revival of the girl she held. It's okay. Breathe. That's it. The room hadn't stopped spinning yet, and Cassidy felt as though she were going to lose what little food she ate throughout the day. She looked around nervously, as if she were looking for someone. The shower stalls around them seeming like tiny rooms that could hold whatever called her name. Heather was not stirred by Cassidy's theatrics and maintained her attention on the ritual with religious fervor. It had reminded Cassidy of when her mother would force her to pray with her, how demanding the older woman was when it came to her practices made how she felt about the seance all the more frustrating. Where? Her voice hadn't fully recovered from her scream yet. Where did he go? He? No one else was. Yes, there was. Heather had finished her chanting, finally. Never deny the presence of spirits, Penny. Cass, tell us who you saw. Was it your guardian? Cassidy didn't respond at first. Perhaps it was the after effects of the drug she was given, but she felt uneased by everything. Her senses were heightened. The stale bathroom scent bled through Penelope's sweet perfume, a forbidden dance among the smoky incense of the ritual site. She eyed Heather and began to notice the details in her appearance. Her European features gave homage to what Penelope spoke of before. In her eyes were the lineage of women she had never met, a lineage of soothsayers spewing their words into the void. Let go of me, Penelope. Cassidy's disappointment caught her off guard. Penelope did as she asked, with hesitation, and watched as Cassidy stumbled to her feet. She stood to follow her, but Cassidy continued to push her away. She didn't know how to make sense of what she had gone through. Seeing her father again was something she thought that she wanted, but he had rejected her. The same man that spoke of family and unity had cast her away from him in the afterlife of all places. Was it even him? They said that demons could imitate anyone, a sort of game to trick unsuspecting travelers. Tell us, Cassidy, Heather called her from her thoughts. Tell us what you saw. Nothing. There was nothing left to hold her back. I saw the same thing that I've always seen. Witchcraft? Spell casting? This stuff is nothing but a lie. Cassidy, calm down. Penelope tried to help. Tell us what you saw, and maybe we can figure out. I said, get away from me. It wasn't regular anger that gripped her. Rather, it was a rage that rose her blood to a boil. I've given everything I am to this coven, and the only thing I've gotten out of it was trouble and vague answers. I'm done, Penny. I'm done. Cassidy shambled away from the ritual by leaning against the tiled wall nearby. As she stepped away, she could feel the anguish of chastising her friends eat at her chest, which caused her to clench it. She didn't know where she was going to go or who she was going to rely on, but in that moment, it had seemed as though she were the only one that she could. She turned the corner and left the sisterhood that she was eager to please behind the darkness of their creating. Let her go, Penelope, Cassidy heard Heather say, as though she were an official on the matter. She needs to find her answers on her own. Help me clean this up. It was late into the night, that much was for certain. But Cassidy wasn't focused on the darkening halls. Instead, she was gripped by her thoughts, her lashing out against the two girls, feeling a bit uncalled for. Her frustrations towards everyone was only growing as she didn't know for how long she could hold her peace. She found herself wandering the senior hall to the rear of the building, and as she approached her locker, her thoughts took her to the last time she was there with Amber. They had just finished their first class, and Amber was talking about how she was going to become a news personality. Apparently, she and Kimberly managed to put aside their arguing to discuss her future, and Amber told her about it. She definitely had the personality for it, Cassidy thought, and she had a good way to enter the space if she would play nice with Kimberly. A sudden chuckle escaped Cassidy and brought her back to the school. She touched her locker before moving on, the good memory fading as she stepped back into her reality. Her travels took her back towards the front of the school to where she was first taken control of, standing in the exact spot where she was discovered attempting to kill her best friend. She wasn't ready for the sudden flood of emotion that had come with being in that spot. It had seemed like she had come from a different universe, one where her and Amber were okay, and life was better. The current space felt unreal and unnatural, a vague tension settling over everywhere she treaded. Cassidy stooped down to touch the spot where Amber's body had lay, and as she focused on the cleaned floor, she realized that she wasn't crying. She was screaming. She stormed throughout the main hall of the school. Everything that was around her had suddenly become her enemy in that moment, inanimate or otherwise. She threw her clenched fists at anything and everything she could find. Vases, chairs, monitors, even the air was against her. She allowed the anger that gripped her to spill out indiscriminately as she continued her rampage throughout the school. She made her way to the cafeteria room and easily tossed a few of the tables over, albeit with significant effort. In that moment, she had become rage incarnate, a being of passion and fire, set to burn the world around her. She didn't care for anything she did or anyone she could hurt, not even her mother. Cassidy stopped when she thought of her again. A quick downpour of cold water to suffocate her burning rampage. She was near the band hall now, somewhere she hadn't been since she tried the flute one day. She was nearly out of breath and felt her throat burning from the sustained screaming, her attention from that being broken by her glance around the space. She pondered whether or not she should apologize and frowned when she realized she was acting almost the same way. She had heard that mental illness was hereditary from someone online, but she didn't know if that was true or misinformation. What she did know was that she was tired and wanted to leave. "Hey!" An unfamiliar voice sent a jolt through her. "I just cleaned this section. What are you doing in here?" Cassidy turned sharply to gaze at the stranger she was sure she was going to have to attack. When she managed to focus on the figure in the dimly lit hallway, she raised an eyebrow at them. It was the woman janitor from a while back, the one that was debating Lydia. The brown-skinned woman was wearing the same styled braids that she had before, but they were bound by scrunchies. The woman was slightly taller than Cassidy, with a well-developed figure that made her seem larger, and, as if knowing what she was thinking, approached her without concern. "School let out a while ago, girl. What are you still doing here?" Cassidy didn't know what lie she should use. "I'm going to have to call the cops if you don't tell me what's up." The woman persisted in pushing Cassidy to give an answer. "You're vandalizing school property, and it's all on camera." Cassidy already knew that the surveillance was top-notch at the school, and she had already figured that she was going to get in trouble for her actions anyway. The threat fell flat, and Cassidy squared herself at the nosy janitor. She had held herself against police officers before, and, even though it was with the help of Leander, Cassidy figured that it was only a woman janitor she would need to deal with. As if catching the hint yet again, the woman gripped the handle to the dust mop Cassidy failed to notice and cocked her head slightly. "I don't like that look you're giving me, kid." The woman took a step back to ground herself. "I wouldn't try it if I were you." "Let me go," Cassidy said in a lowered tone. "I'll just leave. Just let me out." The two stood off against each other with serious looks for some time, each not wanting to yield to the other. Cassidy weighed the potential outcomes of their interaction, and neither of them seemed to end with her escaping with ease. She didn't have any weapons on her, but she figured that aiming for the woman's legs would be key to subduing her. From there, she would use the mop stick to beat her unconscious before fleeing. The cameras would catch it all, but she could maybe run away and hide in the woods like Gabriella did. "Wait a minute." The woman snatched her from her battle plans. "You're that witch's girl, right? Catherine, Carmilla, or Cassidy." She didn't have the chance to say her name as often as she would have liked. "Cassidy." The woman repeated her name to commit it to memory. "Sup, I'm Jerry." The way how they had gone from fast enemies to instant acquaintances had seemed to be too much for Cassidy to process, and she was stunned when the unassuming woman approached her with her fist extended. Cassidy haphazardly accepted the fist and met it with hers before withdrawing it and folding her arms. This Jerry woman was strange, that much was for sure. But as she went on to explain her cleaning schedule to her, Cassidy couldn't help but begin to feel less tense at the encounter. When Jerry had seemed to exhaust her dialogue, Cassidy decided to steal away. Okay, well, I'm sorry for all of this. I'll just leave and... Well, hold on, Cassidy. The attempt failed. I'm going to have to do a lot of cleanup now thanks to you. I don't think that's fair, do you? Tell you what, why don't you help me out with something, and I'll forget about everything. I'll even help you get rid of the camera footage, and you can go on with school as if none of this even happened. What do you say? It was, of course, too good to be true. The woman before her seeming innocent in appearance, yet her motives lacked purity. She began to weigh her options. The idea of her sudden benefactor allowing her to escape without a serious price was what gave her pause, but she didn't know what other option she had. Her option for violence perhaps being taken off the table. Cassidy listened patiently as Jerry told her about what she needed for her to do, and when the explanation was concluded, Jerry leaned her weight onto the dust mop. And seeing as though you're looking for info too, this will help both of us out. What do you say? I can't do that. I'll be expelled if they catch me, Cassidy protested. You'll be expelled if they watch the footage. Jerry trapped her. Cassidy entered the office with great hesitancy, the walls seeming to spy on her every action. Each step felt like a crime as she fumbled with the master key Jerry gave her, dropping it a few times before finding the keyhole. She was told where to go, the principal's office to the rear of the admin office, and managed to spot the general layout to the space, despite the darkened interior. She searched for a light on the nearby wall and was lucky enough to find it, flipping it on to see the secretary's desk and guest lounge, almost as she had remembered it. Cassidy, can you hear me? A disembodied voice made her tense up. Are you in the office yet? Yeah. Cassidy recuperated and aimed her speech towards her cell phone. I'm walking to the office now. Good. Just remember why you're there and be quick about it. Jerry sounded as though she was in a hurry. We're pretty much alone right now, but if security decides to come back, well, you know. The thought of being discovered made her shiver as she began her walk down the admin hall. The walls were a beige white with various posters taped to them. Some were motivational quotes, and others were printed sheets of paper that mentioned upcoming events and things. She had only been to the admin hall once before, and not for too long, that being the day that she was nearly suspended for fighting with Amber before they were friends. It was so long ago that she had nearly forgotten that they were once enemies, her efforts now aimed at saving her from kidnappers. Are you there yet? It had sounded like Jerry was flipping one of the tables she had overturned back over. Yeah, almost. Cassidy was nearing the principal's office as she spoke. When she had reached the door, she used the key and entered the pitch-dark room. After flipping yet another switch on the wall to her right, she was met by a dated office interior that seemed to belong to a movie villain. A large wooden desk with matching leather chair welcomed her to her deal signing. There was a bookcase that expanded half of the length of the right wall and was as equally tall, holding all sorts of bindings and articles. To the left was a group of file cabinets that Cassidy had assumed was where she would need to conduct her search. Before she could become comfortable with her surroundings, however, she was pushed by Jerry yet again. "You should see a laptop on his desk." She was sweeping up the vase most likely. "Boot it up and let me know when you need to input the password." Cassidy again did as she was commanded, and when she was done waiting for the computer to wake up, she maneuvered the pointer over to the box asking for the password. Before she continued with Jerry, she took a moment to think about why she was doing what she was. Sure, Jerry was going to help her clear her name, but there was something else that she assumed the woman wanted, but she didn't know what to think. Of everything the witches had done to her, it had seemed as though she were getting results best without them, her own efforts being what seemed best for her to follow through with. "Come on, Cassidy." Jerry's patience was thin. "What's going on?" "Sorry, it's up." Cassidy snapped to. "Type in all caps, Made Man Morris 756 exclamation at symbol. That should be it." Cassidy smirked at the cheesy password as she typed it into the box, and when she pressed the enter key, the computer unlocked and greeted her with the home screen. Cassidy confirmed her entry with a short, "I'm in," and waited for Jerry's instructions. She played with some of the files while Jerry finished resetting something in the main hall. When she was focused on the task again, the janitor walked Cassidy through the file folder and told her what she needed. Pretty much anything that concerns the school's dealings with Southern Cuts. Jerry didn't surprise Cassidy with the request. "Why do you want this info?" Cassidy remembered that she didn't ask before. What reason could a janitor have to want sensitive files from a school's business dealings? "Do a good job and I'll tell you." Cassidy had just met this woman, but she could tell that Jerry had a grin on her face at saying that. Searching the files using the search bar in the folder was easy enough, and not too long after locating a folder titled Meat, Cassidy found her first target. Inside of the folder was a shipment manifest that detailed the quantities of meat product that was entering the school from the Southern Cuts Corporation. There were a lot of numbers and dollar amounts that Cassidy didn't know how to make sense of, but before she could try, Jerry chimed in once she read off some of the line items. "That's a lot of product for such a small school. Why do you think that is?" "Maybe it's so that they won't run out of stuff to give us?" Cassidy had no idea what the answer was. "Laundering." Jerry said that as though the weight of the reveal should have shocked her. "They have a large shipment on file, but have you seen any special storage for so much product?" "No. They are moving money around and covering it up by falsifying documents." Cassidy assumed that what Jerry was describing was something bad, so she made sure to respond with an assumed tone. She was commanded to send off copies of all the files she found on the subject to Jerry's email, and as she did so, she took the liberty of scanning through a few of them for herself. There was one file that was particularly interesting, a medical records file that seemed to hold a good majority of the student's personal information, and when she clicked into it, she found a copy of an email addressed to Principal Morris from someone named Chadwick. Dear Mr. Morris, thank you for your efforts in maintaining the relationship between your school and our company. I write this email to you in good faith that the aforementioned issue that we discussed will be taken care of with as much haste as possible. There is a delay in our efforts to provide the requested funding for your personal use, but the matter should be resolved by the time the requested information is obtained. I look forward to your speedy reply, as we are desperate in our goals to meet your failing school's needs. Your willing friend, Chadwick Dumont. As Cassidy scrolled the file, she came across Principal Morris's reply. Mr. Dumont, I don't appreciate being pressured to provide you with information that I do not have at the moment. The list of students that have been given to you should be sufficient for the time being until we can acquire the information you seek. I would suggest that you be patient as we do the job we agreed to and hold off on further aggressive methods. Kind regards, Henry Morris. There was a shorter reply she assumed was from Chadwick underneath the principles that seemed to end the communication. Get it done, Morris. We don't want anything going public, do we? Cassidy made sure to make the appropriate copies, sent them all to Jerry, and prepared to clean up and leave when she spotted it. Within the faculty folder, labeled with her last name only, was a file on Lydia. She could barely contain herself as she clicked on the file. What she was met with when she did, however, was something she didn't expect. There was nothing. The file itself was empty, with only a single text file attached. When she opened it, she was met with a short message. I was forced to hire her. She doesn't even teach. She just runs her little group of terrorists while preaching whatever the company says. I should have never agreed to lead this school. So much of what's going on is a nightmare. But what was the alternative? There was no way I was going to end up in Pinewood with those thugs. We're using the students for something sinister. That part is obvious. But I don't know what her part in this is. They're going to bury this school. Might as well make some money before her and SC get taken down. Another file to send off. By this time, Cassidy was convinced that what Amber had said before was true, but there didn't seem to be any evidence on Principal Morris's laptop to shed any more light. There was another folder titled Students that she wanted to examine before putting the computer up, but as she clicked on it, Jerry called to her in a hushed shout. Get out of there, Cassidy. The guard is back. Her heart sank at the approaching threat. The focus she gave to the computer was instantly diverted to her position in the office, and she quickly darted to her feet. Before she closed all of the open files and shut down the computer, she managed to send off the email to Jerry with the addition of one last file. She rushed to turn off the office light and fled down the admin hall to turn off the secretary's office light. As she reached the switch and turned it off, however, she could hear footsteps approaching from the main hall. Panic gripped her throat as she eyed the room to find somewhere to hide. Not 2 seconds later, the door was being jostled, with a set of keys being inserted into the keyhole. Yikes. I'm not so sure about the situation that Cassidy has found herself in. I'm also not so sure about this new person either. I hope she can get out in one piece. Thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening to the chapter. I appreciate everything that you're doing so far as commenting. Be sure to leave a like and to let me know if there's anything else you would like to see happen on the channel. Like I said, I'm going to be making changes as I go along. So any input that you can give will be greatly appreciated. Music for this show is sourced at pixabay.com, fesleyanstudios.com, freesound.org. And again, if you have anything that you would be willing to have presented on the regular podcast, please let me know. And remember, the mind is the battlefield. Be careful to which side you give aid. See you in the next chapter.